Next here, we will get our AI frenzy stock news. Of course, we're not just going to go without it, even if Warren Buffett will. NVIDIA's real bottleneck isn't chips, it's power. Comes from Beth Kindig, also comes from pretty much everyone in our chat, because y'all have been way ahead of these pros for a long time. We've been talking and looking at power stocks as it relates to AI for as long as I think we've been talking about AI. I feel like our group has been talking about the power component to it as well. So pat yourself on the back. But nonetheless, while the world is focused on the race for faster AI chips, the true bottleneck for the industry is rapidly becoming power, according to a leading tech analyst from IO Fund, Beth Kindig. On Sunday, Kindig reshared a snippet of an old interview with Wealthlion, which originally aired on August 29th, highlighting the immense energy demands of next-generation GPUs will drive, quote, at least 10x growth, end quote, for strategically chosen energy stocks, making the sector the next major AI investment frontier. So we've taken a look at CEG quite a bit. I know we've traded Bloom Energy, maybe more for some short-term trades than long-terms. Obviously, the uranium stocks, the rare earth stocks, any of these that kind of play into some of the other power angle of this whole thing. I think the easy money has been made in some of these nuke names like Oklo and so on and so forth, but I do think that there's going to be some more money to be made in maybe more of the traditional names as they become part of the power component for the rising AI and data center demand. I got a funny story about data centers coming up here too. Anyway, Beth highlighted that her firm began moving into AI networking nearly a year ago and is now in the early stages of moving into energy. The shift is being driven by big tech companies gobbling up whatever alternative power they can find to fuel their burgeoning AI infrastructure. The analyst pointed to NVIDIA's upcoming Blackwell platform as a critical inflection point. Quote, Blackwell is about 100 kilowatts more or less. It's breaking through 100 kilowatts, could be 140 kilowatts, end quote. She projected that by the end of the decade, GPU energy requirements would reach 1 megawatt, representing a staggering tenfold increase in power demand. This escalating need creates an urgent and compelling opportunity for investors in the energy sector. And for any of you that are interested in this, the clip before or the new clip that has come out, that is all contained within this article. That link is in the chat there for you. Kindig warned that without adequate power supply, quote, the extremely expensive systems, end quote, like multi-billion-dollar GPU racks would have to sit on the shelf stagnant. That's no good, especially since we're also talking about circular funding for a lot of this stuff. She emphasized that major tech players, which she dubs neoclouds, are thinking a year or two in advance, proactively securing power to avoid future bottlenecks. Chris here saying, Ryan, online banking still faces its challenges. So the online banking angle to this, one of the big areas that I think there's going to be money to be made in is ID and authentication and verification. That's where the whole ID AI play comes from. We might be a little bit early there, but I think there's going to be a lot of advancement and a lot of room in verification, authentication, and proper identification. So interested in some of those stocks as well, Chris. That's separate from power, but I think can be run on a parallel track. Getting back to the story here, looking further ahead, Kindig believes that NVIDIA's Rubin chip, anticipated in the next 1 or 2 years and projected to be 3 to 5 times more powerful than the current systems, could trigger, quote, serious problems, end quote, for the power grid. I know we've already been talking about the power grid, not just us as investors. Podcasters that are worried about national security and the whole lot, they're also thinking about this. I know there's a lot of work that has to go on with the power grid. This actually opens up a thing behind the thing trade as well. So not just some of these power companies, but also infrastructure and building companies that are going to bring some of the stuff online. This foresight, she suggests, easy for me to say, is why companies are accumulating power resources now, even as the broader energy sector is currently, quote, pretty beaten down, end quote, and out of favor with investors. The growing energy crisis in AI has prompted other tech visionaries to propose unconventional solutions. This is it. This is it right here. Real quickly before I read this, I wanted to do a couple of these things. Day Trader here says the real story behind the big power needs of the primary power equipment. We're seeing 30 to 100 week lead times on transformers and other electrical equipment. Indeed, and this is kind of what I mean about the thing behind the thing trade. I think with some of those transformers, there's also a national security angle, as a lot of the big industrial scale ones were produced in China. There's been a lot of podcasts on how those really can kind of expose the power grid. But that as an aside, just putting that aside, Day Trader, I think you're spot on with this. He goes on to say, even control cable is 30 or 50 weeks out if you order today. We're talking about growth, expansion, and all of this, and it's not just power and it's not just GPUs. There's a lot of, this is what we call it, the thing behind the thing. Day Trader, you're doing a really good job uncovering some of those. Maybe we'll call them the picks and shovels angle of the AI or power trade. I think you're spot on there. SA3X says, yes, data centers all around me in good old Ohio. We would expect that to continue as well. Speaking of more data centers, this is my favorite part of the story. OpenAI and Samsung are reportedly collaborating on a floating data center in the ocean, aiming to leverage cold seawater for efficient cooling. Now, this just on the surface, like on paper, this sounds like a great idea, but a floating data center in the middle of the ocean, I mean, what could go wrong, right? Who am I? Who am I? What could go wrong with that? A process that can account for up to 40% of land-based data center power consumption. This maritime approach is estimated to cut total energy use by up to 70%. I think this is cool. SA3X, I'm with you. I think that this is cool. I'll tell you what. I'm not an engineer. I am glad I am not the engineer tasked with figuring out how to run this safely and keep people's lives from being in danger. That seems to be a daunting task. Pretty awesome, though. Day Trader, this was one of my other thoughts here. I kind of just put it on the back burner because I'm not smart enough to figure out the answer. Day Trader says, I would think salt water would be hard on the equipment. Yeah, salt water probably doesn't mix all that well with electricity and electricity generation, let alone just straight up metal in the ocean. With you on that. Like I said, not smart enough to figure out all of the solutions to this, but it sure does sound cool. Floating, they're going to make a James Bond movie about a floating data center in the ocean. You watch. If they do this, there will be a Bond movie about it, and I am here for it. Meanwhile, Amazon founder Jeff Bezos and venture capitalist Chamath Palihapitiya have even touted the concept of placing data centers in orbit. Scratch what I just said about James Bond movie. There will be two James Bond movies, one about the one in space and one about the data center in the ocean. The James Bond fan out there might say, well, Ryan, they already kind of did that with Moonraker. Maybe we get a Moonraker 2. I'm spitballing here. Anyway, data center in orbit to harness limitless solar power and the natural vacuum of space for cooling. That also sounds pretty brilliant. Feasibility of this? Yeah, I'm not too sure yet. Predicting these orbital facilities could become cost competitive within 2 decades. While Kindig suggests focusing on energy investments, the broader energy exchange traded funds have underperformed this year, while the nuclear ETFs have had a stellar performance. So again, this list in here, maybe you want to take a safer approach and play this via ETFs here. Again, the nuke one's already kind of run. Maybe there will be some more movement in that, but what we're really looking forward for here is underperformance so far. A list of them in here. Some of the traditional energy sector ETFs versus the nuclear energy ones.